You're up.
That's right. All set? Kathy, you good?
I am.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Dr. Earl Metzler, Superintendent of Schools, SAU55. It's my pleasure to call to order the SAU Board Reorganizational Meeting of April 15th, 2019. I've asked Kathy Velcher to please call the roll.
Brian Boyle.
Here.
Lee Doobie. Kimberly Farah.
Here.
Jason Giard.
Here.
Sheila Lowe's.
Here.
Sarah Mockemer.
Here.
Sean O'Neill.
Here.
Caitlin Parnell.
Here.
Kristen Savage. Susan Sherman.
Here.
Jennifer Silva.
Here.
David Smith.
Here.
James Sweeney. Anya Senka.
Here.
Ask you to please stand and salute the flag. Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you and good evening. I'd like to welcome two new members to our SAU board. From Hampstead, Jason Giard and Dave Smith. They're both with us here tonight. I'd also like to congratulate and welcome back re-elected members, Sean O'Neill from Danville, Sheila Lowe's from Sandown, and not with us tonight, but also Kristen Savage from Plastow. So we have the approval of minutes next. I would ask if it's okay with the board if I allow the newly elected chair to deal with that business after we elect the chair. Is that okay?
Yes.
So as we've discussed in the past, as we do these nominations, they don't require a second. I'll take them in the order in which you're nominated. And at some point, we'll ask 3 times and then close the nomination period. And then we'll take a vote in the order in which they were nominated, if that works for everybody.
Point of
Farrell?
order. I'd like to move to weighted voting for the evening.
I think,
Second.
oh, okay, yeah. So the temporary chair, or superintendent, recognizes Dr. Farah. She's made a motion to move to weighted voting. I think it was seconded by either Sheila Lowe's or Sean, by Sheila Lowe's. Discussion on weighted voting? Seeing no discussion, can I move it to a vote?
Yep. Just a
Do I
Timberlake
have to
board.
vote?
Just the Timberlane
Timberlane.
board. that
Just the
votes on
Timberlane board
this.
votes. Okay, all those in favor of moving to weighted voted for the evening, please raise your hand. Timberlane only. Kathy, you got that? 1, 2,
Thank
3.
you. 5.
Against? So we've moved to weighted voting. Dr. Farah sent to the board a newly calculated weighted voting based on the numbers from 18-19 that were presented in early March.
No, those aren't the 18-19 numbers.
17, 18.
They're 17-18, but they lag a year ideally.
I apologize.
The website was updated in March, but the numbers are lagging a year.
Just a point of clarification, what was that vote?
It was 5-1-0.
No, it should be 6-1.
6-1.
7 is here.
3, 4, 5. Thank you.
So I apologize, to Dr. Farah's point, the numbers are from 17-18, but Kathy has recalculated all of them based on how many members are present, because as you know, your votes change based on how many of you are there. But you have all the votes, they just get divided equally. There weren't statistically a big difference, but there was a slight difference based on enrollment.
So these
And I
numbers
believe
are
that's been
accurate.
provided for all members in your packet.
These calculations are as accurate, okay.
Everybody see that?
Yeah, I was just checking them. If these are as accurate as we can get them, then these are as accurate as we can get them.
Acceptable to everybody? Is there anything else before we ask for nominations, before I ask for nominations for chair for the SAU board for the 1920 campaign? Seeing nothing at this time we'll accept nominations for the role of chair. Recognize Sean O'Neill from
I'd
Danville.
like to nominate Dr. Farah for chair.
Okay, Dr. Farah has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Recognize Sarah Mockemer from Plastow.
I'd like to nominate Brian Boyle.
Brian Boyle from Plastow, I'm sorry, from Atkinson, has been nominated. Any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Sarah Mockemer.
Sarah Mockemer from Plastow has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Ask a second time, are there any other nominations? final and third time, are there any other nominations for chair of the SAU board for the 1920 campaign? Seeing none, at this time, we'll close nominations for the role of chair. We have Dr. Farah from Danville, Brian Boyle from Atkinson, and Sarah McNamara from Plastow for the role of chair. And we'll vote in that order. First, those in favor of Dr. Farah for chair, please show of hands.
Six. Thank you.
Those in favor for Brian Boyle as chair? And those in favor of Sarah McNamara as chair? So we have Dr. Farah has 6, Brian Boyle has 1, and Sarah McNamara has 6. And I believe Kathy can calculate, I believe that the weighted voting has Dr. Farah as the chair, but I'll let Kathy confirm. Do the exact numbers, I guess, with those.
Oh, one missing.
Okay, we have for Dr. Farah, 162.36. For Mr. Boyle, 27.06. For Sarah Markamar, 109.29.
Okay, Dr. Farah, congratulations, chair of the SAU. All yours.
I'd like to entertain nominations for the vice chair.
Brian Boyle?
I'd like to nominate David Smith.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? I'll ask again, any other nominations for vice chair? Any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, moving on. Mr. Boyle was nominated first, so all in favor of Mr. Boyle? All in favor of Mr. Smith?
We have 189.56 for Mr. Boyle and 109.87 for Mr. Smith.
Congratulations, Mr. Boyle. Do we have any appointments for treasurer or assistant treasurer at this time? Are we still?
Have the appointments yet?
Okay.
I thought Laura Jones from Hampstead would.
I'd let,
Yeah, with Laura Jones, the current SAU treasurer.
Yeah, from Hampstead.
Okay. And she wishes to remain in the position? Is there any other nominations for treasurer? Any other nominations for treasurer? Any other nominations for treasurer? We'll take a vote on Ms. Jones, is that? For treasurer for the SAU. All in favor? All opposed? Are there any nominations for assistant treasurer?
I don't believe there's anybody.
We haven't currently.
We don't have a nomination forwards that was available for your discussion. I think if you wanted to discuss how to fill that.
Okay. Oh, we'll move on then. Nominations for appointment of the recording secretary?
Nominate Kathy Belcher.
Are there any other nominations for recording secretary? Any nominations for recording secretary? All in favor of Mrs. Belcher for recording secretary? Thank you in advance for your hard work and the work that you've done over the past year as the recording secretary. It's much appreciated. Appointment of counsel. Do we have a nomination for appointment of counsel?
I showed Jim O'Shaughnessy as the current.
Is Mr. O'Shaughnessy, Drummond and Wilson is the current SAU counsel, is that correct?
That is correct, unless a conflict arises where he gets conflicted out. And then, you remember the person that we used to do the hearing? Bob Casassa would be the second in line in the event he gets conflicted out.
I will nominate.
Drummond and Wilson.
Simon and Wilson.
I'll second.
All in favor of Drummond and Wilson for counsel?
Woodsum.
Woodsum, that's right.
It was, I'm sorry, I missed the nomination. Who made that nomination?
Mr.
Brian.
Boyd.
Well, thank you so much.
We'll seek a motion to approve the bonding of the treasurer.
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Would you please let me know who's making that second? I didn't.
Sue
Sean
Sheridan.
O'Neill.
Sue.
Oh, Sue, sorry.
Myself and then Sue.
Or not, was it unanimous vote? Was that?
Yep.
Thank you.
Bank depository recommendation, Mr. Dowd, do you have a recommendation for the bank depository?
Currently with TD Bank, recommendation to remain with TD Bank.
Does anyone want to make a
I'll
motion
make
to
a motion
continue?
to stay with TD Bank.
Mrs. Lowe's makes the motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Savage seconds the motion. All in favor? Next item on the agenda is authorization for the SAU Board Chair to sign professional staff contracts and other instruments as needed.
I'm actually gonna make that motion, but I wanna make it in a modified. I want, for myself, I would have appreciated if it was an authorization of the chair and the vice chair to sign contracts, the staffing contracts.
So you want like a line put on the
Just
contract?
just as like that I advocated for last year. I don't wanna be known as a hypocrite. I want it to be consistent.
So are you making a motion to authorize the SAU Board Chair in conjunction with the Vice Chair to sign professional contracts? Is that your motion?
That is my motion.
Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second for discussion.
Mrs. Silva seconds for discussion.
Originally, you said staffing contracts, and then you said professional contracts. So are you looking for
I would-
staffing contracts?
I would
across-
say both. I mean, all contracts.
Okay.
That would require the authority of a chair / vice chair in this situation.
I think that's what we haven't approved the minutes from the last meeting, but I think that was a motion that was made in that last meeting as well.
I just wondered if,
Sorry, Mrs. Sherman.
sorry. I just wondered if Sean intends for there to be a line added to the contract so that the chair and vice chair sign, or in conjunction with. So the chair would talk to the vice chair about what's being signed, so there'd be a communication or a physical signature. I'm not sure what you mean.
I basically want a unanimous vote between the two people to sign it. So, yes, I would like probably a signature.
A line
A
added.
line for the signature.
Okay.
I'm fine with that. Mhm.
And Mr. Sweeney?
I know we don't have a vice chair seat, which is probably the first time in SAU history, not to go back and forth. But could someone from Hampstead be on that signature for those contracts?
Would you like to amend the motion?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so you're amending the motion to
That the
say,
chair, the vice chair, and a representative from the Hampstead School Board sign those contracts.
I'll second your amendment.
Yeah.
Fine.
is there any discussion on the amendment? I would just, go ahead, Mrs. Silva.
Are you looking for the Hampstead chair or just any Hampstead representative?
Any,
Okay.
I guess my only comment to that motion would be, in the past, the chair has had the sole authority to sign contracts. And as you may or may not be aware, and let the new members be made aware of this, Mr. Cipriano signed 3-year contracts for board members.
Jason's not on this board anymore, but
Right.
the motion on the table is what I just said.
Mr.
The
Sweeney,
history of the SAU is we
Point of
swap
order,
between
you are
chair
not being
and vice chair.
recognized by the chair.
And that's why I
Point
made
of
that
order.
motion.
So in the past, there's only been one person that has been signing the SAU contracts. And if the chair is from Hampstead, it would be them. If it was Timberlane, it would be them. So that's just my issue with that motion. Mrs. Parnell?
It would seem that the direction of this is to have more transparency and to have more people aware of contracts and what's being signed. I do agree with Mr. Sweeney's point that if we are looking for more transparency, if we are looking for more of people working together, where Hampstead does not hold a seat right now for the chair or vice chair, I would agree with his motion, and I would support it, that Hampstead should have some sort of representation on contracts, especially looking at multi-year contracts.
Mrs. Silva?
I'm not really looking to go backwards, and I can appreciate that concern. And that's the concern that this Timberlane board had for the entire previous year, in which the Hampstead board seemed to have very little regard for.
Sorry, Mrs. Sherman?
But in the spirit of moving forward, I think that perhaps the Hampstead chair could be that person, or that chair could appoint someone else from the board, from her board, to collaborate with the chair and vice chair. If we're trying to move forward and not get stuck in, keep going backwards and rehashing things, I'm in favor of moving forward and letting them see the contracts, and I don't see why they wouldn't agree with the contracts, but that's my point.
Thank you. Mrs. Lowe's?
I have no problem with Hampstead having a signature on it, but I would say it needs to be clear that all 3 signatures have to be on anything that is signed in order to make it valid.
Okay.
In other words, one person comes in and decides not to sign it, it's got to come back to the entire board. Do you
Correct,
understand
because
what I'm saying?
a board action would negate the fact that 3 people wouldn't sign it, because the board would be acting. Dr. Metzler?
Thank you, Dr. Farah. The professional contracts, it's 4 employees, so it's kind of a moot point. It's my contract, which I'm under contract through several more years. You have Mr. Dowd, who's under contract. The assistant superintendent, which will be presented to you at some point so that you'll vote on that, so that will happen here. And a 4th is the human resource person who's also under contract. So there's really not a professional contract. It's up to for signature this particular year.
Well, I'm a little confused then, because last year, there shouldn't have been any professional contracts up for signature, but I do remember the conversation where we were told that all professional contracts have to be signed every year, and that's why they were signed, even though they were in the first of a 3-year contract cycle. So,
The salary adjustment gets signed, but that's a vote of the board in terms of the salary adjustments. There's two different things, so I'm not quite sure the rationale. I mean, it's no different than the Timberlane, and I know this is not a Timberlane meeting, we bring the contracts forward. There were some adjustments in terms of contractual language for some folks. If there was a new contract, it'd be a new contract, but other than that, it's an addendum to the contract, which is a salary adjustment.
I would have to say, I have the contracts from the last 2 years. There were changes in the terms of the contracts in terms of when the end dates for the contracts were.
There was a lot, you might want to look at them, because there was changes in the contracts.
There were
Language
changes
contracts.
on the end dates.
There was changes in language throughout the contract. There's changes in those contracts.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll be discussing contracts at the next meeting. Mr. Boyle?
First, I have no problem with Hampstead signing. I guess my question is, because we're talking all contracts, so what are the, what kind of contracts we have, the SAU?
There's letters of agreement in their contracts. Those are two entirely different things.
Well, again, there's, you mentioned professional contracts documents, but aren't there other contracts at the SAU?
They're letters of agreements. They're not contracts. They're two entirely different things.
Okay, so there's no other contracts.
They're letters of agreements. They're not contracts. They're two entirely different things.
My hearing's okay, I mean, is
No,
it?
I'm just- The answer's not different no
So
matter how
there-
many times you ask the question.
There are 4 professional contracts.
I'm not,
And
I
the
understand
other
that. What
10
other
SAU
type of thing,
employees.
like the lease, and there's,
Yeah.
what other kind of contract documents is what I'm trying to get at here?
Legal instruments.
Thank you.
That's what it says, legal and other instruments as needed.
So that's, I guess that's, maybe I didn't word it properly, so,
No, if you're not talking personnel, if you're talking something else,
that's exactly, yeah, that's what.
some of the things are shared services, so we may be using something that might be here at the SAU, that could be considered a contract used by both districts, I guess. People that have been in the role as chair, I mean, how many other things do you sign as an SAU? They're typically signed by Timberlane or Hampstead, or Timberlane and Hampstead. There are very few other things that are signed solely by the SAU chair, other than the professional contracts here. The letters of agreement are not something that requires an SAU signature.
Well, I guess that's what I was getting at.
Check
I was trying to get a feel for what we're actually talking about here, you know, because the actual, just like the on the unapproved minutes where it talks about January 14th, it's a motion that all contracts would be chair and vice chair, and I was just trying to, that's all contracts, not just professional. So I was just trying to get a feel for what exactly are these documents that SAU, I know there's a ton of them at the Timberlane level.
There's not a lot at the SAU. I'm not saying there aren't any others.
Okay.
As they come up, I don't know if off the top of your head, there's
Signed
something that
one.
require an SAU signature.
That's all I
but
remember.
Yeah, that's fine.
They're inconsequential in terms of money or time.
Okay.
Does this pertain to the amendment?
Yeah, so if we agree to the 3, would 3 signatures or 3 approvals, are we talking about the manifest as well? Because the manifest goes to the chair of the Hampstead Board, to the chair of the super SAU, to the vice chair of the SAU, and to the chair of Timberlane. So
But
that too, would we add,
But Hampstead chair would already be on that,
I know, but there.
it's 4 lines, there's 4 places to sign.
right?
Oh, well,
Would we be adding all more signatures there?
One more, you mean?
At least one more, yeah.
I don't understand why you would add another one to that.
Would we need to add, would this amendment involve that? Because that's a legal, that's an instrument is needed.
It's not a contract, though.
Okay. Someone's gonna
That
sign
that
that
was
manifest.
not my intention
No,
for the
yours
manifest.
was the, yours was the contract or professional,
Contracts.
okay.
Right.
So okay, I'm back to understanding we're talking about professional things.
Any more discussion on the amendment, Dr. Metzl?
Certainly, you know, it's about the frequency in terms of how often this board meets or not. But the chair and vice chair having, you know, if you're in the office and something's requiring a signature, you know, we could have you both there, and certainly a Hampstead representative. I just don't know, I'm having a hard time seeing, other than contracts, what would be something that would be an issue, but there could be something, I don't know.
Okay, so I'm-
Off the top of my head, I can't think of one, but we'd have no problem calling them 3 people, and if that was what you wanted to do. Or, I mean, it isn't practical to bring everything here, because we just don't meet as frequently as you do in the regular board. We may meet more often, but we still don't meet frequently enough for that.
See what happens. Any other discussion on the amendment? Mrs. Belcher, could you read the amendment back, please?
Yeah, the amendment was to motion that the chair and vice, that in addition to the chair and vice chair, that a Hampstead board member also sign those instruments, contracts and instruments.
Discussion on that amendment?
Do instruments include letters of agreement?
I don't know. Does the chair typically sign letters of agreement?
No, it's like hiring, it's like support staff. There's certain things that are by RSA as superintendent's responsibility, not
So
school
I guess
boards.
that would be a no.
I can amend that after this amendment.
Hmm?
No, that's okay, go with this amendment, then I can amend it after.
Okay, so we'll vote on the amendment now. Is everybody clear on the amendment? All in favor? All opposed? Sorry, Mr. Belcher. I think all,
No, I think David didn't.
I did.
You did,
I did.
and.
sorry, all in
I did.
favor?
Yeah, I did.
All in favor? Again, do you
Thank
have it?
I got it now, yeah. if it would-
All opposed?
Sean?
One?
I'm sorry, 12.
So now we are back to the motion as amended, which would be, let's read the motion as amended before we start discussion.
To authorize the board chair, the vice chair, and a Hampstead school board member to sign the instruments and contracts of the SAU.
Thank you. Any discussion on the now amended motion, Mrs. Silva?
I'd like to amend the motion to include letters of agreement.
I'll second that.
Letters of agreement for,
So that it includes all staff.
I don't think
They
that's
don't
the
work
case.
for us.
I don't think you're authorized to do that by tonight. That would be by statute, that is under the purview of the superintendent as a support staff member. Your policies and allow you to, for the 4 top SAU administrators, but I don't believe that the statutes support the school board signing off on support staff and the influx of the changes to support staff.
Okay.
Is that helpful? I mean, it would be because, for example, you wouldn't sign it because you don't evaluate them. You're not informed to be able to offer or extend a letter of agreement with the support staff member for an additional year because you do not participate in any part of their evaluation. And so, you do that with the superintendent, and
We
then your
don't
policy
hire
allows
them
you
or
to
fire
do
them.
3 others in addition to the superintendent, but you don't have a policy that authorizes you to do that to,
And that's by RSA. We added a 4th person to that. Typically by RSA, it's the superintendent, assistant superintendent, and business administrator. We added the human resource director in this particular SAU to that.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody know the RSA off the top of their head? Just curious. It's fine.
It's
I
gotta
just,
be the
I
powers
can
of the-
find it.
it's,
Duties and roles of superintendent.
it's the roles of the superintendent, but it's,
Okay.
so you've gotta remove that motion on the floor.
Try motion, or
So that amendment
just anything
did,
about-
is being withdrawn? Are you withdrawing the amendment?
Yeah, okay, I'll withdraw my amendment. I'll withdraw my second.
Okay, so the amendment and the second is withdrawn.
Oh, sorry, you seconded it, Sheila?
I'm sorry. Sheila
Oh, I
seconded
didn't
it.
realize that, sorry.
So we're back to the original amended motion. Does anybody need the motion read back? The amended motion? All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. Okay,
Dr. Farah?
yes.
Point of clarification. So like the manifest, there'll be 3, not 4 lines to sign? Is that my understanding?
On the contracts.
On the contract, but it would be similar to where there were 4, now there's 3. Like, with the manifest, there's 4 signatures potentially. So it would be those same roles, but I thought I heard Hampstead was any one of the 5, not the chair?
Correct.
Correct.
Any Hampstead
We would just
representative.
write Hampstead School Board.
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Okay.
and just to expand on that, is that going to be, now that there's going to be a requirement of 3 for a majority of the 5 signatures on there? Because right now, it's only 2 of the 4.
And there are not, we didn't discuss the,
This is the check manifest.
we did not discuss the manifests, because those are separate than what we were discussing, because this
Okay,
was.
I just want to be sure.
So
We're
we
all in
haven't
agreement.
changed the
So
check
The
manifest.
manifest is going to be the same, the 2
2 out of
Is
50.
the
everybody?
2 chairs of the boards, and then the vice chair and chair of the SAU. Okay, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Everybody's okay with that?
Okay.
Okay.
One recommendation I would ask, Madam Chair, would be is that in our respective meetings, at least I'm definitely not going to speak for Hampstead, but I know at the Timberlane meeting that the manifest comes down for the SAU, I would sign it. I would actually like that to be filtered down to the entire Timberlane board, because I think they should be aware of exactly what is being spent on that
Oh,
and
so
see
they can
those
see the
checks.
file folder.
So that should be part of the normal process of check manifests going down, also being posted, which is something that we've done as well on the Timberlane side, so that people can review it prior to coming to the meeting. I would like that same courtesy extended to the rest of the board relative to the SAU check registry.
Well, posting of the check registry is something that we can discuss at a subsequent SAU meeting. Timberlane is now posting the check registry for the board members, so it's something that we might want to discuss that the SAU do moving forward. And I don't think there's any issue with the Timberlane board seeing the SAU check register. I mean, it's presented, it's given to the representatives at the Timberlane meeting. I'm not sure how Hampstead does it.
Depends on it's
If on,
We have a designated member who goes and checks the check registers. Sounds like that's a little different from what you guys do.
we have that for the Timberlane board, but we're talking about the SAU check register now. Having the Timberlane board have access to it during their board meetings. I'm not sure how it's done at Hampstead. If the other members, other than the signing members, see the check register, the SAU check register.
No, one person does it.
Yeah.
I did it last month.
Yeah. Okay, so
Because
I think-
Kathleen was doing it.
okay. So I guess that's something we could discuss, or posting of it for the board members at a future meeting. We can add that to the agenda. Give people time to think about it. Okay, moving on. The superintendent evaluation process. For those of you that are new to the board, the superintendent currently is evaluated on an annual basis. That needs to happen no later than the end of May. That will go into a non-public session. My question is, so at the beginning of spring, at the direction of the SAU board chair, the 360 direct report feedback form is distributed to all direct reports. My question is, has that been done?
It has not been done yet.
So, beginning in early spring, is that what time of year is that typically done? No?
Typically it's done right after the reorg meeting.
Okay,
We
okay.
gave you,
Right.
in your packets, I know you just, a bunch of dates to try to help to assist the chair with scheduling those meetings instead of asking people for their calendar.
Correct. I would ask that we're going to need to have probably 2 meetings. I would ask that we schedule meetings on May 7th and May 15th. That looks like the time that the majority of the board members are going to be present. I know we have more people present. There's, on the 7th, 8th, and 9th, we have 10, but I think that's too close together in terms of if we're doing an evaluation and then have to come back and think about it. So if people could hold the 7th and the 15th for the superintendent's evaluation, I'd appreciate that. I don't want to push it too late into May, in case there's a freak snowstorm. I don't know, something happened. So, and I would like to direct that the 360 direct report feedback be distributed to all direct reports of the superintendent. And that the superintendent will be filling out his self-evaluation form. For those of you new to the board, you can read the policy, but basically that comes to us. The board fills out an evaluation also that's compiled by Mrs. Belcher. Then the board sits as a board, reviews, because these are confidential documents, they don't go out of the boardroom, reviews, and please correct me if I'm wrong, reviews the staff's evaluation, reviews the evaluations of the other board members. Then the board has a discussion in terms of the evaluation and compensation changes for the upcoming year. The board chair, vice chair, or members of the board participate in writing of the written formal evaluation for the superintendent. In the past, at least since I've been on the board, there's been a huge binder with all the supporting documentation for the superintendent's evaluation. I personally would, and this is at the board's pleasure, would rather just see the summary documents without the supporting documentation, or the supporting documentation uploaded to SharePoint so that people can view it as they need, but that's kind of up to the board. Since we probably won't be meeting before that time, what is the board's pleasure in terms of the superintendent's evaluation package? For those that have been on the board, I think you know what I'm talking about, the big binder.
It would be, if I could?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. I know you'd like to see an executive summary of the goals, but that is the evidence of goals set, goals met. So I think the board should see it. I mean, we've been producing it, and we'd put that together whether you wanted to see it or not. But if it needs to be summarized, because that's easier to follow, I mean, we certainly can try to put some sort of summary together. Would it also be your expectation to have that by Tuesday, May 7th?
I would think so.
Okay.
That's when we're looking at the, if
just-
we can have all those evaluations back by May 7th. I know we're pushing it a little bit, but I think we're,
I just have a question, a logistical question, since I'll be doing it. So the 360 goes out, the self-eval goes out. The past, the board has, on occasion, decided to wait to see the results of the 360 and the self-eval before they made a determination about their own evaluation. That's not the case, then the time frame would probably work. I can send out all 3 evaluations
Simultaneously.
right away versus, what is the pleasure of the board?
I mean, has it always been done, or does it differ year to year?
That's what we've done.
It's been pretty consistent the last few years. It was very different when we first started.
The last couple
Consistent that
years.
they're all done at the same
No,
time?
that
Or-
we've waited.
That we've waited. So the first meeting that we have then will be just looking at,
Right, on the 7th, you would have the results of the self-eval and the 360.
But
Okay.
not our own data.
not our own data, so that then the second meeting, we'll have our own data.
Right, and that'll all be prepared for you to look at on the 15th when you make your determination about the evaluation.
So you have to look at it then, and then decide what you're gonna do. Not sure
Okay.
that's necessarily easy, but.
Right. Okay, Mrs. Silva?
I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think, when you were saying like a summary of, the binder, I don't think you were saying not to have any of the evidence, but just to have the bulk of that evidence somehow securely uploaded electronically.
Correct, yeah.
Not
Not printed
not
off.
that nobody wants to see
Not
the evidence, but just not to
Yeah,
print
sorry.
off
not
14
not
of those huge
manufactured as
binders.
something you can put your hands on.
Right.
Got it. Sorry, I
Right,
misunderstood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
I
but
misunderstood.
as far as the, a smaller version of the binder that we can look at that has the summary part of it, but with all that supporting evidence, not all printed.
Sounds like
I
somebody
think
could-
so, we can work it out, it's our first time doing it that way, and you can decide at the end of it whether or not it was successful, and you want to modify it the next time.
It's a lot of paper and a lot of big
You know, either way,
binders.
right, either way, you're thinking about the printing end of it, but either way, it all has to still get done.
Yep.
And then there's about creating the repositories and large enough to accommodate the bulk of the, not everything can be uploaded, some things are pretty big, so we'll work that out on our end.
Okay, thank you.
I don't remember how did we do it last year?
We each got a binder.
No, but I mean, as far as the dates, we only met twice, right?
Yeah, but
We only
essentially,
did twice.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we had the 360 and the, if I can, we
Sure,
had the
go ahead.
360 and the self-eval. We
So the-
looked at that.
Some years you had 2 weeks in between.
Yeah,
This
we
is
had-
8 days,
this
but it's
is
still
only-
doable. I mean,
Yeah, we can do it.
So in the past, last year, we had the self-eval, the 360.
Before we did before the board did their eval, so they could see what, and you saw some evidence of his goals too, completion. So you got to see that stuff, which to me, personally, I like that evidence
Yeah.
more than I like necessarily seeing the 360. I prefer to see the goals and the evidence and make my own mind up if he's fulfilled those goals.
And so
I
we're
agree.
saying Tuesday, May 7th might be cutting it too close to get, if we bumped everything down,
2 weeks,
is that pushing it out too far?
Well,
the 15th.
Hampstead want to weigh in on this?
Well, I think if we bump it out, we start, at least looking at this, we start having fewer and fewer people available.
I know, that was my concern.
Well, I was
Because
looking
I-
at the 22nd and
I
the,
added mine in just
The
because so I
9th
could
of the-
look at-
22nd's
22nd's
not
blocked
available.
out.
oh, I'm sorry, the 21st is 9, which is the same as the 15th.
Right, we could do,
But if you're,
And then the next, the Wednesday, Thursday is 10, the same as the
Right.
7th, 8th, 9th is all 10.
That's what I was going to suggest that Thursday, just because a couple extra days takes a lot to coordinate this, I would imagine.
so
so
can I,
sorry, Mr. Smith, what dates are
I was
you
just suggesting exactly, I was repeating a little bit what I was agreeing with Jennifer about the 10th, the 10 people are the same on the 7th, 8th, and 9th, so why not book that, a couple extra days to give Kathy and the team a little bit more time to organize it since it hasn't gone out yet.
Okay, so May 9th,
I would suggest May 9th.
May 9th, that's fine. Okay,
May 9th and then
and then what, the 21st?
the 21st,
and the 21st.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
okay,
It's a few more days in between.
yeah, that works, okay. Any other comments or questions as far as that goes on the evaluation process?
Dr. Farr?
Yes.
This has been done a couple different ways. Some boards have asked me to be here, some boards have asked me not to be here. So I can either or, I don't really have a preference. It's entirely up to you, what you'd like.
Well, I think what we'll do is let the board think about that between now and the meeting on the 21st, and maybe then make a decision then.
Okay. Yeah.
It's, for some people, it's a whole new thing. They may want to discuss it with other members, so I think we'll wait. And so board members should be thinking about whether or not you'd like the superintendent here or not during that discussion on the evaluation.
And it can be just for a portion. I mean, I've been,
Right.
I go upstairs and wait upstairs or not. It's entirely up to you, however you want to do it, so I appreciate that.
Okay.
So Thursday, May 9th is what now?
Thursday, May 9th, we will get the 360 and the 360 from the SAU staff and then the self-evaluation from the superintendent to review. That will then give us time before we write our own evaluations, and then Mrs. Belcher will compile those into a big spreadsheet that we'll have on the 21st. And then we will do the evaluation.
So does that mean our next meeting will be the 21st?
No, our next meeting will be the 9th.
Okay, that's
But
what
on the
I'm
9th, our evaluations won't be done. We'll be
Okay.
looking at the superintendent self-evaluation.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure that we're meeting
Yes.
on the 9th.
Yeah,
and
we-
the-
Yes, we're meeting
And then ours will be due back before,
well before the
Oh, yeah, I can
21st.
work out that timeline
Yeah.
too.
on the 9th, yeah.
Before.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on that topic? Okay, moving along, in your packets, you have the ethics policy. Was it in the packet?
Yeah, it's in the back.
In there.
Yeah, the back.
Oh, maybe it's behind it? I don't know, I don't think I have it.
Single page policy.
Have it?
Sign it.
It's up to board members, it's
Right there.
policy that's supposed to
Right
be.
there on top.
Oh, there it is. Oh, it's out of, oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. I was looking for it in the wrong place. This is the SAU Board of Ethics. Members are asked to sign this. Obviously, you can't be forced to sign it. If you'd like to sign it, please do, and then please provide it to Mrs. Belcher. I assume she keeps these on file for the board from 1 year to the next.
And if you don't mind, Dr. Chair, could we please also put your name so when we
Okay, so everybody could print their name and sign it.
He's not here, you should be good. Yes, I have.
Lawyers.
Okay.
I'm not gonna talk about mine either.
Moving on to summer work schedule, 4-day work week. Dr. Metzler is proposing a 4-day work week for the summer for the SAU office. Before I open that up for discussion, could somebody explain to me what the entails? What dates does the summer include?
The summer, it typically is, depending on, you got Thursday, the last day of school, and you're gonna vote on the 14th, so we look to, I don't know how many weeks it is, it's somewhere between 6 or 7 weeks, where we do 4 10-hour days. I think Timberlane has, is that have we voted on that yet?
No.
No.
No, and Hampstead has,
Not
looking
yet.
to adopt it too.
Right, we haven't
So,
voted on it yet.
it's basically a Monday through Thursday. Jeff can talk to you a little bit about the reasons, or if you want to know why we do it.
No, unless any other board members want to have an explanation? No?
Quickly, we try to clear out buildings. It gives us a chance to work in them. Hampstead has not done this in the past, but Timberlane has. So the maintenance crew can figure out, they know they have Fridays, they know they have the buildings to go in and do projects that may be in the office areas. There was some talk about, we do save some energy, how much, I don't know, but that's one of the other reasons. And there's a lot of vacations being scheduled and those sorts of things, so sometimes staff will do 3 or 4 day weekend as opposed to taking entire weeks off during the summer. So there's a lot of different reasons, but that's really been it. Sheila? Oh, sorry.
Sheila?
I have a question, though. On the 4 days, the 4 10-hour days, is this building follows that also, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are the hours still 8 to 4? Or they extended the 10 hours?
They're 10 hours, but the actual office building itself is the regular office hours. So people are available, and then by appointment. So people will come in, if there was a special ed meeting or something, they could make arrangements with the special ed director if she was here. They could come in before or after the time.
Okay, but if I needed to come down to, say, sign check registers, and I can't get here until after 5,
You would just call Kathy and.
it still wouldn't be open, though. Am I correct? For the normal person coming in, it would be closed, really?
For a board member, it would be, it'd be a phone call. But for the normal person, we wouldn't be open for normal business. We'd be open during normal business hours for normal
8 to
business.
4 or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the schools have that posted as well.
Right.
All right. No, it's just,
I think you better
My
call them general
curiosity.
public instead of normal people,
well, general public,
All right,
Post
any
strange.
other discussion on the summer schedule?
So do we need a motion
We need
for
a
that?
motion.
I'll make the motion to go to a 4-day work week at the SAU
Second.
office.
Mrs. Sherman makes a motion, Mrs. Silva seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Great, thank you very much.
All right, next on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
I don't have a lengthy report. I know there's a lot of interest in terms of our assistant superintendent search, search committee members, from Hampstead, Caitlin Parnell, and from Timberlane, Sarah McNamara, certainly, and Nancy's here as well, so search committee. We do have a candidate that we'd like to bring forward. Candidates were notified of their status at this time, that the search committee does have a candidate they'd like to bring forward at your next meeting. And I would direct any of the rest of the questions in regards to that to the people on the search committee. I had a chance to meet with them, but if they wanted to give an update to the board at this time.
Pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, we had, I will say we had
Yeah.
really good candidates, and I was
Did.
proud of the work that, it was a very collaborative effort. We had a 13-member search committee,
Yeah.
who I felt like represented all of the different areas of both Timberlane and Hampstead. And all of them participated
Yeah.
in all aspects, so it was and I felt like in the end, we ended up with strong candidates and made our recommendations.
Yep. Pretty much, yeah.
So from my perspective, I met with the team. I did not vote. And, and if it were close, I'd be bringing more than one. but the team had decided very strongly on one candidate as opposed to the other two. And if there were three close, and we had agreed prior to voting, or that team had agreed, if they were within a certain number of points, they ranked them 3-2-1. And with one being almost like golf, the low score was the best score. And if they were close, we were going to bring as many as 3 or 2 or 1, but one was, the group was pretty much not entirely unanimous, but was overwhelmingly supporting one candidate over the other two. So I supported their recommendation, and my hope was to bring that candidate to you at a future meeting.
I do know that the Timberlane Board took a vote and requested that 3 candidates be brought forward for recommendation. Was the committee aware of that?
Yeah, we had discussed it during the committee, that there was a request made, but the committee all felt strongly on this one individual. So that was, the committee work that we did.
I mean, we
Okay.
did vote. We
We
held
did
a
vote.
blind vote, essentially. We wrote and ranked our choices. And that, the individual who came out with the
Low score,
lowest
which is
score,
the- which
yes,
is the
because we went 3-2-1.
Okay, so the committee did not wish to entertain the fact that
Yes, that,
Timberlane's board would have liked 3 candidates, regardless of what the committee ranked them.
well, we discussed as a committee, should there be 3 candidates brought forward? And the general consensus of that committee was that we wanted to put forward who we felt was the top choice.
Was the strongest candidate.
Mr. Sherman?
I thought the public evening that we did over at the PAC with the 3 candidates was excellent. They each spoke well. I thought it was great. We televised it. We had, Nancy was running the computer, and we had email questions come in from the public. There was some really thoughtful questions that came across. I thought they handled themselves well under that kind of, you don't know what the questions exactly is gonna be, and they did a really good job. I thought all 3 candidates that I saw publicly were pretty good. So I think that was worthwhile doing that step.
So are we planning, Superintendent, are you planning to bring forward a recommendation at our meeting on May 9th?
I am.
Okay. Do you have anything else for your report?
I don't have anything else. Certainly, any questions anybody would have at this time, I don't know if it's an appropriate time or if you just want it to be in a report form. I'd certainly be willing to,
Any other questions from the board?
while you have me, yeah.
Any other questions from the board?
I have I guess it's a question or a potential action item I want to bring to the board's attention. I think that granted, it was 2 years ago, but I was the Timberlane chair, and then I know that last year that when I was Sue's vice chair, we had issues getting facilities. I would like this board, I personally think that if Hampstead or Timberlane or the SAU needs to have a meeting, we should be able to notify the administration, give them whatever is 1, 2, 3, 4 days, and then get access to this building and have it so the chair or the vice chair have whatever security is needed to get into the building. You can secure the rest of this building, but I think it was a couple times it was difficult for me 2 years ago, and I know that Sue and I don't want to say 4 or 5 months ago, it's a lot easier when we meet. Same thing, you look at this 14 of us. When you meet in a room like this, it's all set up for us. And I think I think professionally, if we can let the administration know in advance that, hey, we need, here's your 2 or 3 day notice if the chair, whether it's the Hampstead chair, or the SAU chair, or the Timberlane chair, needs the meeting. This is an SAU meeting under the control of, as a matter of fact, the people at that table. So I would like the appropriate boards with proper notice to be able to get access to this building on.
So are you making a motion?
I'd like to make a motion direct the administration, because I don't know, well, the reason I want to make a motion here, because I don't know what's involved in terms of time frame, what kind of notice they would need to.
Oh, okay, if I could? The issues really around it are really around security and who's responsible for the building. Now, I know you're board members and you have some sort of responsibility, but we're responsible to secure the building, and then somebody needs to be working. So if I'm here, obviously, I can lock the building up, or if Kathy's here, we can lock the building up. I don't know which evenings, if there's something already else scheduled, and if the SAU is going to trump anything else that's scheduled here and say, like, sorry, you're out, this is in.
I don't think that's what Mr. Boyle is suggesting.
I know that's not what he's saying. He's saying he wants board members to have the responsibility to secure a building, and I have a major issue with it because we're responsible for it.
Excuse me, Mrs. Silva?
I'm sorry, I didn't think that's what he was saying either. I don't think he's
Yeah,
saying
no,
board
no, no,
members should
no.
secure the building.
So, are you saying there would be an issue if the entire building was secured, all these offices, these doors were locked, of allowing the chair of a board to have access to the back of that door so we can get in the boardroom? That's an issue?
Big screen disappears because it wasn't locked up, and it's our responsibility, and I'm not suggesting anybody here would take it. It's our responsibility to make sure the building's secure.
But you would know who accessed the boardroom. And
It's our
it's filmed
responsibility to
in here,
secure the
is it not?
building. You need
And
employees
it's filmed in here?
What?
It's filmed at the
Isn't
doorways.
it filmed at the doorways?
We have security.
So you're concerned that if the board chairs were allowed access to this bill? I guess I'm a little perplexed here, because I know as a selectman, as an elected official, I had access to any portion of the town that I would have requested. And I don't think that that's an abnormal request. So.
Being a town official, being a school board member or a board member are not the same thing. It's not the same. So now
How do they differ?
We're comparing a municipality to a school district. It's different. We have a responsibility. I wouldn't leave the schools wide open for somebody just, like anybody that wants to go in and use whatever they want and leave. We have to secure the facility. So
Okay,
if the spirit of Brian's thing is make sure there are employees available so that we can have a meeting when we want to have a meeting, that makes sense.
That's the spirit of,
It's
that's
the
what I'm trying to
spirit.
do.
I
Make sure
think
there's,
I hope you would share the concern that I just can't leave this place open. I mean,
well, no.
We're not asking you
No,
to just
I'm
leave
not-
the place
I don't
open.
want the
That's a
place
little
open. I
disingenuous.
want to make sure that, again, I don't want to speak for Hampstead. I just know that Timberlane SAU, it just works better when the meeting is at a table like this versus a classroom or at the library. And I just know it's been an issue in the past. And if everyone who's sitting at this table has been elected by their constituents, you look at very confidential information, we should be clearly responsible enough to have access to a meeting. And as far as I'm concerned, I think only the chairs or vice chair should be able to set that up. And I'm not talking anyone of the 14, but of course it would look a lot better if a SAU or Timberlane employee was here that could do it. That's to get us in and out.
I'm sorry, I'm just a little confused. Are we talking about, if Timberlane schedules an additional meeting or something, about having access to the room? I guess I'm just confused about what circumstances we're talking about. I don't have a problem with it, I'm literally just confused.
Timberlane has had an issue with getting access to a facility if we want to have a board meeting in the summer.
Okay.
Or when, at some other time, when we want a board meeting.
That's an SAU building.
Right.
Access to this building. So that's Mr. Boyle's point, is that could happen, I don't know, with the SAU board. So we want to have some mechanism to preclude that from happening.
So-
Go ahead.
Sorry, if it's a meeting, doesn't it have to be noticed like 7 days in advance? Is that what the
Yeah.
parameters are?
Well,
I was just wondering, because you mentioned 2 or 3 or 4 days in advance. That was my
A
question.
special meeting.
Emergency meeting.
Emergency meeting.
Okay.
Worst case emergency meeting, I think it's either 24 or 48 hours. Just
Okay.
24 hours, so there you go. So in that rare case, you have an emergency meeting. And I'm not trying to circumvent the staff. I'm trying to create access to this building there's 3 different boards here.
Okay,
That's all.
I
That's all I'm
appreciate the
trying to do.
clarification. I just wasn't sure
Yeah.
what direction we were headed in there. Thank you. That was my only question.
So, anyhow.
so I'm sorry, was there a motion and a second?
He did not make his motion.
He didn't make a motion.
Started and then he thought. So I'm gonna strike it so that if you would like to make any motion, you can start from scratch. Is that okay?
Okay, I guess I'll try to make this a motion then. Okay, a motion to direct the superintendent to create access to the board chairs for special meetings in this building, in the SAU building.
Before somebody seconds that, if there is a second, I don't think you want to say special meetings. I would just say meetings, because a special meeting has a
Okay.
definition as opposed to a workshop or a regular meeting. So you may just want to say
Meetings.
meetings.
Congregating. One more thing about when you say the board chairs or vice chairs, what board do you use? Are you talking specifically about the SAU board providing, making sure that the SAU board chair and vice chair can gain access?
Any one of the three boards.
Oh, you're saying of the three boards?
Any one of the three boards, because this is an SAU building.
No, I've actually.
No,
It's a
actually, it's
Timberlane
not.
building.
Then
It's
how,
Timberlane
well,
boarding
this
that
is
we-
this is, I believe, what the problem we had in the past.
It's a
Well-
Timberlane boarding that we lease for SAU
Oh,
meetings.
okay.
So this is so Hampstead, I don't think has the issue with their board because you use a different location for your board meetings, correct?
We meet in our schools if we need to,
Yeah,
or conference
We
rooms
have-
in our schools.
yeah. If we don't have access to, we usually meet in our town hall. If we don't have access to that, we meet in one of our schools.
Okay,
But
so.
when we have, excuse me, when we have workshops and stuff, we meet in the middle school.
Okay, so you wouldn't want this access anyway, so, again, we haven't had a second, so I think you're asking that the SAU chairs and the Timberlane chairs have access, because unless Hampstead would like to have access, Brian's putting you all into this motion, so.
I mean, I can't speak for my board. As the chair of the board, personally, I can say I don't feel I need access, but
Okay.
that's my personal.
When you say, create access, do you mean, like, I should be able to walk up to the back door and get into the building? When, like,
Only if there's a meeting.
or do you mean that the superintendent should make sure that there is an employee available so that we can have access?
Do you mind if I just make a comment about that?
Yes.
So, honestly, I think Mrs. Silver has got it about making access, and the reason I say that is, as you talk about the different scenarios that you might have here, a scenario where you wouldn't want the superintendent or the recording secretary here, under those circumstances, I'm assuming that there could be documents or confidential documents that you would want to have, make sure they're disposable, or if you're even looking at the superintendent's evaluation information, and that does need to be, that does stay here, and that can't stay here and unmanned if you don't have a staff member. So I was just thinking about the different scenarios in which you would use it, and that having a staff member manned would alleviate a couple things. The security piece about who's got keys, right? And who's getting keys made, if that's the case, and the security piece and the liability if something is missing, and now who's responsible for it? And then just dealing with confidential, any kind of documentation that cannot leave this building that might be confidential, and how you would put that someplace for the next.
Well, I guess the only issue to have in terms of the confidential is if a staff member weren't here, then we would not have any confidential information that would have been provided to us. Where would we have
No,
gotten?
these are just different scenarios. I wasn't saying that would be the only scenario. I was just saying that as one of those scenarios. Currently, even right now, what is happening is that if the Timberlane board is having a meeting and they go into non-public and they kick us out, I like to use the word kick us out, but, then we stay. Somebody who is here in the
Right,
building
right,
to stay,
yeah,
make sure
yeah,
that it gets
yeah,
locked up and
okay.
secure. Because we set the alarm, we don't want to give the codes out to
I don't want the
people.
codes.
You don't want that responsibility to know what, to be responsible for setting the codes and the alarm to make sure that the building is secure before you go. We have a process that we do that.
Great.
To make sure before we leave the building, whoever's the last one at the door, we have a process that we follow. And that could be that maybe something didn't get locked. Maybe by error, it didn't get locked, and now you have ultimately the liability and responsibility because you were in the building last without it being staffed. So I'm just thinking about, if I were a board member, I would not want that on me.
Okay,
I want that
thank
on
you.
my responsibility.
Appreciate that. So,
I think the major concern is that we were trying to meet as a Timberlane board, and we could not secure a facility. Actually, our chair, Sue, I'm going to speak on your behalf here, I guess. She had to reach on out to secure a potential place at the Plastow Library, I believe it
Town hall.
was.
And downtown hall was
And,
also.
and we started going out with different members trying to secure different locations. And that's the part that I just say, that should never happen, period. And that's what I think we want to do, is when this board or subsets of these boards want to meet, they should be able to meet. And not
Right.
at the schedule of making sure that somebody is there from the SAU. That's a nice to have, but it's not a requirement.
Other than
Well, you don't have to be
security
SAU, as long as, I don't care, an employee, I don't care what, if they're employee SAU or a Timberlake employee, I really don't, as long as get us in the building and secure the building afterwards. I just want,
So you still don't have a second on your motion. I think what your motion that you may want to Mr. Silva's point, Mrs. Belcher's points here, and the superintendent, is that you would like to make a motion that should a board request access to the SAU building for a meeting, that it be provided,
be
period.
provided, well, there you go. Period,
So-
and then they can make it whatever happen, make it happen with their employee, is that what you're saying?
Yes, well, that you may want to make that motion.
I think you just did.
Okay, I will make that motion. Should a board request a meeting at the SAU building, that request should be, will be honored by the SAU personnel. Obviously, period. Stop.
Second.
I keep explaining myself.
John seconded.
Got it, thank you.
So now that does not mean that we kick out somebody who had a previously scheduled meeting unless there was some urgent matter that required it. So this is just to make sure that if Timberlane wants to have a meeting, that we don't have to call the Plastow Public Library.
Can you
Have a
refresh my
meeting.
memory as to why you ended up in the library?
I don't really think that's relevant at this point, so I'd like to, unless you would like to.
think we need to.
I don't-
Relevant
I
only
don't
because
think
the
we need
inference
to.
is we're not letting you use the building, so I was just curious what it was.
It
I-
was stormy day and.
I don't think we need to go beyond that. So there's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
Yes, I'd like to say, I'm going to vote against this mostly because, out of respect for the personal lives of the individuals that work in this building, to make a request for a meeting disregarding that they might have other commitments, which might keep them from being here and making the building accessible to the board, I feel is unprofessional, and it's not something I can support. It's a working relationship between the boards and the SAU employees, and to just carte blanche say, we're asking for access to the room, you need to make sure that there's somebody here, make it happen. It's not something I'm comfortable with doing. So I will be voting against this motion.
Can I just a question on, if in the past it's always been a 7 days ahead, there's a public notice of a meeting, and then there's 24 hour, is there times outside of that you see this happening? I'm just trying to understand context.
There could be times if there were a special meeting, that doesn't require the same amount of notice.
No, I understand that the 24 hours is for special meetings, correct? So in those cases that typically, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm asking the question of, if there's a 24-hour notice, it's usually a hot topic and everybody's dropping things and gonna be there, correct?
Correct. But
And then the 7 days is a notice ahead of time, so that somebody, to your point, I agree with you, you gotta give professional courtesy. Everybody would have the chance to say, somebody will be there, correct? So is there a reason outside, I'd like to know if there's a context of, has that not happened in the past, where there's a 7-day meeting or a 24-hour meeting, where somebody, including myself, would not be given access, or has
Well,
not?
Yes.
well, the problem is you
Okay.
can't, yes,
Okay.
yes,
No, I
there
appreciate
has
that, Brian.
been.
That's-
That's the quick answer, yes, there has been, because you can't provide 7-day notice of a meeting if you can't get the building to have the meeting. So, yes, that has happened. Is there any other discussion on this motion?
No.
Mrs. Belcher, could you read back the motion?
Yes, Dr. Farah, a motion should a board request a meeting space at the SAU building, the request will be honored by the SAU personnel, It was seconded by Mr. O'Neill.
Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Oh, sorry.
7 Timberlane, oh, thank you.
All opposed? Sorry. think you've already done that calculation before.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, let me just.
189 to 109.
Are there any other topics that you would like to discuss during the superintendent's report? Mrs. Lowe's?
No, I got a point of order.
Yeah, you making a point of order right now?
I can wait.
All right. The next item on the agenda is the schedule of the date for the annual budget meetings. Thank you for getting these up so promptly. Are there any questions?
My
Yes?
turn. Okay. I think that we should have a meeting before this. I'd like to, somewhere on the agenda, get policies put on the agenda, because I've been looking at these policies, and some of them haven't been updated since 2002.
Well, I think perhaps at our meeting on either May 9th or May 20, well, probably on May 9th, that we could have a discussion about policies of the SAU, and I think, because I think there was also a recommendation that policies be looked at the SAU. I think
Please.
that was the auditor's recommendation. I also think another agenda item, I don't think this year's audit has been discussed at the SAU.
That
Current
should be on the
audit?
Next agenda.
Yep.
Kim, are you gonna go give those to Kathy? Are you writing them down too? You
I'm
got 'em?
writing them,
Okay.
I have 3. Discussion about posting the manifest, the policies, and the audit.
Mhm.
May 9th. All 3, yes.
Yep. Okay. So back to the scheduled date for the annual budget meetings. This is the current schedule. Are there any questions or concerns with regard to that schedule, Mrs. Silva?
These will all be 7 PM?
I hope so.
Okay,
7 PM?
They are 7 p.m.
thank you.
Any other questions on that? I don't need a motion on that, right? We're just informing the board? Okay, all right. We do need to go back to the minutes. Our last set of minutes was January 14th, so we'll do the public minutes and then the non-public minutes.
They spread out.
So I'll be looking for a motion on the public minutes first.
Make a motion to accept the public minutes from the SAU meeting, January 14th.
Mrs. Silva makes a motion to accept the minutes from January 14th. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. O'Neill seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Got it? All opposed? All abstained? 2 abstaining. Okay, moving on to the non-public session of January.
Make
Yep.
one point, I don't show up as highlighted on those minutes on the front page. I did pose a question to council, I'm waiting for clarification on how to count the weighted vote of an abstained vote.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. So I wasn't sure how to do that, so I put it in as still providing the remaining Hampstead board members the full count of those votes if someone abstained, but I do need to get clarification. I'm happy to modify the record once I get clarification on that.
Okay. So should we defer these minutes until you get
Yeah,
clarification?
If you're happy with whatever it says.
I'm fine. It's not going to change that
It won't
tally.
change the outcome, it just helps us moving forward
Right.
how to tally.
Yeah, no, thank you for pointing that out. Moving on to the non-public session.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the January 14th, 2019 non-public session minutes as written.
Mr. O'Neill makes the motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? All abstaining? Is there any other business that any of the board members would like to bring? Yes, sir?
I would like to actually make a motion that the SAU, all of our meetings are live streamed.
Okay, is there a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
Is there a discussion on that motion? I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
Jill.
Ms. Lowe. Is there a discussion on that motion to live stream the meetings? For new board members that may not be aware of it, in the past, we have not live streamed the meetings. And Hampstead board members, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I think in order for Hampstead residents to access it, you've got to go through the Timberlane URL or website. So in the past, Hampstead has not been in favor of doing that. I'm not sure how it worked with the assistant superintendent search. Wasn't that live streamed?
That was live streamed.
How did that work?
It was done that same way as you just described.
Oh, oh,
Hampstead,
On the
people would go
Hampstead,
there.
yeah, on the
Okay.
Timberland side. I think more of, if I could, Dr.
Oh,
Farr,
sure, go ahead.
it was more broadcasting live, that broadcasting live to Hampstead and across the Timberlane district just can't work. We've got different providers, and that was more of an issue than the live stream. The live stream, there's no reason why they can't use the .net account.
So your motion is to live stream, correct?
To live stream.
To live stream.
So it's been being live streamed, it's live streamed.
No, it's not.
No, it's
It's
not.
not.
It's being recorded,
Just
and
so
then
you're
it will be
gonna
uploaded
live
to
stream.
Vimeo.
Gotcha.
Every time we've asked to live stream it, that doesn't carry.
Because what happens is that we get a hot topic and nobody can know what is transpiring, so then this room fills on up beyond belief with people in here, and then where most people would be comfortable watching what's transpiring at this table from the comfort of their house. And
I like people coming.
I like people coming too, but, you know, also too, I like to put some value on their time and coming down here for something that I think we can reasonably provide pretty much free of cost.
Can appreciate them.
We're gonna set the precedent by live streaming that.
Ms. McNamara?
Similar to when we have board meetings, though, if there is an event in the district with our students, correct me if I'm wrong, that takes precedent over the board meeting being live streamed?
That has typically been the case. What I've asked, just so, sorry to entertain this for a second, with Hampstead, in the fall, usually late August, early September, I usually bring a calendar of events, you know, all the Timberlane events that are kind of big events, and the board kind of takes a look at it. And I've asked Timberlane to not schedule events on Thursday nights when there are board meetings, primarily because you have children or grandchildren and you want to go see them. And so they've been really good about not scheduling things. Occasionally, there's a conflict or there's no other way to do it. And so adding another night on that, I wasn't gonna say Wednesdays. I know there's only 4 or 5, 6 times we meet, whatever, but in the event that there was some sort of, and you know when it happens around Christmas, it happens
Yes.
around
Yep,
the end of the year with year-end celebrations, and you typically have a couple events, you know, meetings in May that you may have wanted televised, which a majority of them are non-public anyway. And so telling somebody else that they can't live stream some sort of event at the PAC so that we could have 3 minutes of a SAU meeting live stream because it's all non-public, really didn't make a lot of sense to me. So that was one of the reasons. So we typically put kids first. The kids get, if it's something that's kid-oriented, we want to broadcast that live first, and then this was second. And the way we kind of managed that with the Timberlane board meetings was just asking them not to schedule important student events on the same nights as board meetings.
Ms. Silva?
I'm not sure we need to ask people not to schedule things on Wednesday nights, but if we can live stream it, just live stream it.
Right.
As a precedent, right.
And then if not, it'll just go up the next day or two.
Right.
Pretty quickly when there's space. That was the other thing, is sometimes they run out of,
Space.
I'm not the tech
Right.
guy, they
The
run out of space because there's so
upload
many
bandwidth.
things. And then they get in the queue. You saw right when we got back from after Christmas break, there was like ding,
Huge.
ding, ding, ding,
Yeah.
ding, ding, because
Right.
it freed up some space and they started listing all the events.
It's a function of what our current package is that we have, and you can upgrade that package, and it's very cheap money to upgrade it, and we wouldn't have any of these problems.
We'll have to find that out.
But
Yeah.
we
I
can
looked-
take
We
that
can find that
offline.
out.
I looked into it with Ken and it is possible, but the back end of that, it wasn't cheap for us to do it. It wasn't inexpensive. It was, but I don't have the exact dollar amount, but
Okay.
it was a cost.
So,
associated.
so is there a motion on the floor to
and a
live
second.
stream?
Yes. Any more input from the Hampstead board? Because I know this was an issue in the past.
I think we're ready to vote.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion to live stream? All opposed? Okay, the motion carries. I think it was 14-0? 13-0. 13-0, okay. Any other business before the board? I am going to ask that for non-public, to update the board on the non-public that was done in January. Mrs. Yasenka?
Madam Chair, I have a question, especially for our new board members. For the last 40 years, this SAU has never implemented weighted voting, and we have always very, by practice rather than by rule of law, but by practice, we have always switched so that both the Timberlane District and the Hampstead District had a leadership seat at this table. Both of those norms have been changed now. We've gone to weighted voting, and both leadership seats are being filled by members of the Timberlane District. I would like to know if someone can give me an explanation or a rationale for that, why that was done.
Well, I can't speak for the board, but what I can say as the former vice chair is that my role and my, the collegiality of the chair from Hampstead, to put it bluntly, was non-existent. I was not communicated with, my emails were not answered. So in terms of cooperation between the two boards, that's one issue I had. Having another board, having the Hampstead board take the Timberlane board to court over the budget and spend, as you know, Hampstead lost on fees, Timberlane paid fees. We were probably talking about I'd say upwards of $30,000 to $40,000 that these two boards had to spend, when in my mind, had your chair picked up the phone and given somebody on our board a call, it could have been resolved. So that's reason number two. The third reason is that Timberlane has just approved by vote an SAU withdrawal that is going to impact our board, our district, and I would think that that may be part of the reason also. And I think it speaks to just the issues that this board has had since I've been on here. I've only been on here 2 years, so that I think has given some weight to not having what in the past has been precedent. I don't know if anybody else from our board.
Is it clear then to say that this is retribution because you did not like the past chair of the SAU?
No, I had nothing against the past chair personally. I couldn't
You
speak
said
to
that,
whether,
you
no,
just said
no,
it.
no,
It's
no.
just what you said.
No, I said that there was no, you were saying in the past, it's been a mutual work between the two boards with the chair and vice chair. That certainly didn't happen last year.
And
I
so
have-
it's going to happen this year with not having any Hampstead board member in a leadership seat?
I think the
Think that's going to work better for you this year?
it's not up to, it's not up to me. I think the board, at least in the last hour, has tried to ensure that Hampstead's taking an active role here on the SAU board. We certainly are not trying to be more divisive, but that's, as I said, I'm not speaking for the Timberlane board, I'm speaking for myself and my feeling over the last 2
So are there
years
any
since I've
other
been on this
reasons?
board.
Is that the only reason?
I
Like
can
the-
let other board members speak.
Okay.
Mr. Boyle?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Karen. Until that morning in Rockingham Court, I had no idea about this 40-year history. And this is my third year in the board, so, and I think I don't try to go backwards. I'm personally encouraged. You've got two brand-new members on your board. I wish you the best in your chairmanship this year. When I look at this board, on paper, you may have a chair and a vice chair, but the vice chair in this board, even, I think, traditionally, has never, probably just been a title, if you will. These meetings don't meet. as often as regular, the Hampstead School Board or the Timberline Board, so I don't really, I think you may be reading a little bit too much into it, as far as I'm concerned. I don't really have any bad feelings, if you will. I mean, I can tell you with people on my own board, I try to treat them respect, and I can tell you, anyone who watches our meeting, I'm on any given night not on the same page of any one of these other 8 members. But I can walk out and just shake their hand and try to do business. And that's what I'm going to attempt to do this year. And I don't really know why we can't do that. There is an SAU withdrawal thing, as Dr. Farrell pointed out, which really should have very little to do with the meetings, our meetings here. This board won't be dealing with SAU withdrawal issues. We're going to be conducting the business of the SAU. I don't know why we can't do that collegially. I'm not looking at this 40th thing, which, quite honestly, again, I didn't even know about this 40th thing until that morning in court. When someone stood up and said that, I didn't even know anything about it. Because as you pointed out, there's no back and forth. Okay, there is. I'll take your word for it. I couldn't tell you.
Mrs. Silva?
Yeah, I was just saying, I don't see it as retribution. I'm not sure why retribution is the word that is used, but based on last year and how things went, for me personally, it was a way to guarantee that that wasn't going to happen again. I feel like Dr. Farah will work collegially. We weren't able to get meetings last year. Things didn't really go well last year, and so to make sure that it's not going to be a repeat performance of last year, I support Dr. Farah being where she is.
Are there any other reasons? Does it have anything to do with the percentage amount that we pay? I'd like to just bring up that at your board meetings, you both publicly stated, Mr. Boyle, you did, and I believe you did too, Madam Chair, that you wanted complete control of this board because you pay 77% and Hampstead only pays 23%. So we should not have a leadership seat at this table.
So you heard me make that statement?
Yes, I did.
I
It's
made
on
that
video.
statement. Okay, all right. Well, truth
But
be
just-
told, as far as I'm concerned, if everything's equal, I think there's 5 towns. I think if there's going to be a equal thing, then every year, then there should be a different town, should be chair on the board, if you want to look at it that way.
But it's not set up by towns, it's set up by districts.
I understand, but.
If it was set up by towns, Danville actually pays less than Hampstead does.
Again, but there's 5 towns. All I can say is if you want to get down this road of equal, I guess, okay, that's another way to look
No,
at
I
it.
just wanted to bring up the fact that it was brought up that it's a control factor based on who pays the most. And I don't know what rule of law that comes from, that whoever pays the most has the most say in anything.
Well, I don't think you want to go down the road, I don't think you want to go down that rule of thought discussion right now because I think the record will clearly show that this board was attacked by proclamation, all kinds of stuff. We never did that to your board. So we're trying to move on. This board never had a proclamation. This board didn't sue that board. I mean, we're trying to go forward. So, I mean,
You can go forward, but you can't go forward unless you take into account the history, so that you don't make
Okay.
the same mistakes again.
I think there was a lot of mistakes made, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm going to tell you right now, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm very confident, I've had a lot of conversations with my good friend, Mrs. Sherman. If Mrs. Sherman was the SAU chair, that lawsuit wouldn't have happened. If something happens, you work together. And if someone said, no, if you don't get this done, we have to by statute do this, we would have done it. So that was unbelievable. So, anyway, what's done is done.
Yes, it is done, and I'm not sure that it's going to be much better moving forward,
Okay.
since you have managed to basically annihilate the influence of this board. I'm not sure how our taxpayers are going to like the fact that they're going to continue to pay 23% of all the costs, yet we don't have a leadership seat at this table for the first time in over 40 years. That's all I'm saying.
Duly noted.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, welcome.
Dr. Farah? That good? Is that okay?
Yes, Dr. Metzel?
One of the things that, you know, we talked about weighted voting, and we talked about this as we looked, we all found out a lot about that. And the configuration of the board, when we read those RSAs, the weighted voting was really 3 members from both sides, and those 3 members maintained all the votes, the weighted voting. So it might be something you may want to discuss. I'm not, we reorganized, we're going forward in the future to look at the representation. Where it's tricky in terms of the way that law is written, we have 4 towns in Timberlane, so one town clearly wouldn't have a seat if we went 3 and 3. It was something to consider. The only other thing, just a side note, and Brian Boyle asked the question of the candidates at the assistant superintendent's meeting, you know, and he asked them, you know, what are the 2 biggest challenges or goals that you could see? And I thought it was somewhat of a softball, but the answer was somewhat risky. I mean, the real role, our role, is to really try to get these 2 boards to work together. And it would be great if they were, you know, they were equally represented in terms of leadership, and that's not the case. You voted. But that was really, I thought, would have been a really good answer from any one of the 3 candidates to talk about how they were going to contribute as a new set of eyes to help the 2 districts work together. You have our word, and you have our word. We're going to continue to do the best work we can for both districts, and certainly want to be supportive. So, you know, that's the work moving forward, and I look forward to meeting with you too, and figuring out what the needs are and how we can accommodate them. I think the delivery of services, I hope you would agree, has improved, and we continue to try to get better at what we do. So that shouldn't be any different for both districts in terms of their participation here at the SAU. So thank you for letting me say that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
And, go ahead, Sean.
I was also going to add is that this board has agreed to acknowledge your high school students that are going to Pinkerton, that are in a different SAU, that there is a legal quagmire of where should they be included or not. And in tonight's proceedings, they were included.
That's right.
That, to me, is still unsolved, or uncharted territory, and I would still think is that we could push that issue, and they should not be included, because it is a strong argument that since they are in a separate SAU, they should not be part of the count. That's what's in the RSA.
I'd like to clarify they're not in a separate SAU.
Yeah, Pinkerton's not an SAU.
It's not an SAU.
Private school run with public funds.
I don't want to get into the micro
yeah,
I
part of
understand,
that,
but also, you're saying
You
to
brought
us,
it
and
up.
we are taking in that you want to move forward, and this is how we're going to do it. That comes across, Mr. O'Neill, basically as a threat.
No, it's not a threat. It's just
To
basically
say,
it's a,
we are basically to say, we're being nice by including your
being
high
nice.
school students who live in our town, who are serviced by services in this SAU, and are paid for by our taxpayer dollars. So to turn around and say that we're being nice by including them, we could take that away. I'm just making the point that comes across as condescending, quite frankly.
Okay.
so be
okay.
it. I mean, but it's a
Sean,
fact.
Sean,
It's not a
I-
fact that they're
I-
served by a separate SAU.
Mrs. Parnell, I
Okay.
understand. I can see why you took offense to that. So, Sean, if I could just drop it, I'd appreciate it. I do have, you know, because obviously there is obviously some bad blood here between the boards here, based on what's transpired, say, in the last 4 months. So, Mr. Jasenki, you had the opportunity to speak your piece about that. I guess from looking back at 40 years, maybe there has been, but I really can't understand why the Hampstead Board issued the proclamation against Timberlane and then took us to court without trying to resolve it in an amicable manner, and just to, I don't know, I guess I'm perplexed. Maybe you can help straighten us. I mean, I think we're just trying to air some of the hard feelings here. I will shut it down if it gets to be too
No,
ruckus, but I think
That's
it's
fine.
we need to try to do this.
We did the proclamation on the advice of council, the resolution, excuse me, on the advice of council.
Well, we kind of figured that out, but I guess
Right,
I
because
don't understand.
Because our council advised us that we were at risk, that we had a liability with things that were being discussed. So that was written up to give us some legal coverage.
Okay.
We
felt that we needed to be disassociated from the statements that were being made in public meetings about SAU employees and the name-calling that was going on. You called Mr. Jason, just Cipriano a dictator, Nazis. I mean, we did not, frankly, don't want to be associated with that kind of behavior, board behavior. And so that's why that resolution was drawn up, for history and for public record, to say that we didn't approve of any of that was going on. That's why.
In the lawsuit?
The lawsuit was because 3 times in a row, you did not appear to work on the SAU budget.
Well,
How else were we going to get you there? 3 times. You walked out once, you didn't come.
Okay.
And presumably, as you said in the courtroom, you didn't do it because of, you didn't like the chair.
No, that's, well, okay, I asked the question, you gave a response, I appreciate that. Is there any other business? I would like to entertain a motion to go into non-public under C. Someone wanna make that motion? 91A:3, paragraph 2, section C.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Belcher, can you call the roll?
Mr. Boyle?
Yes.
Dr. Farah?
Yes.
Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose?
Yes.
Mrs. Lockham?
No.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell?
No.
Mrs. Savage?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
No.
Mrs. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
No.
Mrs. Yusenka?
No.
And there's no lady voting here?
Correct.